Today we are driving the all-new Audi Q7 for you, the all-new generation. We have it here in the new Agave green color, and we're going to take a look at exterior, interior, and of course what has changed in driving and how good is it against the competitors like the BMW X5 and the Mercedes GLE, whereas the Q7 is always a little bit larger, so has always been somewhat in between the segments. All the details you need to know with Thomas and Audi Fuel in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go right here. As I said, Agave green, this color, the Alopias blue we had last time also in the studio. These are the two new colors. Then here we also have the black package. So this then with darkened out elements in the grille here. This is also the S-line, also darkened Audi rings. However, from the distance then you cannot really see the brand because the rings are dark. So I would prefer them in the bright styling, but that's totally up to you. Also 4 centimeters wider than before, so a very strong stance, and the grille is somewhat more visible, even more upright. The length at 5 meters and 6 or 199 inches, that's more or less the same than before. Wheels from 20 to 23 inch, these are they are really large. 23 inch, I mean, look at that, even almost half my size basically. Yeah, this is, does it still work with the comfort? Because the comfort, you have a base suspension and then you have optional the adaptive air suspension in 2 trims. So today we're driving the S air suspension. So this has like a sport air setup and is approximately like the comfort setting of the S air suspension is somewhat the normal setting of the normal air suspension, you know, somewhat in that area. We're going to find out more about that. In the rear, completely new styling, and if you have all the extensive LED packaging, you have also digital matrix in the front, and then here in the rear you have these OLEDs, so the most sophisticated lighting technology, but they make a lot of option that you then get to this very spec. And you also have seen it probably in the studio episode already that we have this new light projection for the turning indicators, both front and rear. That looks really spectacular. Is actually a nice idea. Also increases safety actually. Yeah, unless it's super bright in the day, then you cannot really see it that much, honestly. Another interesting technology, which is also equipped with this vehicle here, is the rear axis steering up to 5 degrees in the opposite direction than the front wheels. And we're also going to find out how that changes then the turning circle and so on. And this vehicle here is basically fully spec'd. It also means that we have, for example, the automatic doors. You don't have to go for these, but you can. That's an option. Then let's talk about the engines. Yeah, I can also probably close them with the button again, for example. So they all set it here on the 3-liter 6-cylinders. Meaning here for the European market will still be important to have the 3-liter 6-cylinder diesel. We also have it right here in 245 or in this 300 horsepower spec. This one here 300 horsepower spec, and 6 seconds or 6.2 seconds is the acceleration figure, 0 to 1 kilometers an hour, 6 to miles an hour. Depends on the 5 or 7-seater configuration. The 7-seater is a little bit heavier. That's why the acceleration is a little bit slower. Then on the petrol side, you have a 3-liter 6-cylinder petrol. In Europe, in the North American market, it's a 2.9-liter V6 bi-turbo with more horsepower. And also on top of that, on the North American market, you can get then the SQ7, the 4-liter V8. Then there's also the plug-in hybrid that is based on the 3-liter V6. And you'll also find the exact engine specs and also in our data comment and in the video description. Important about the all-wheel drive system, here by the way also with a nice dampening and so on, hydraulic struts. So the all-wheel drive system is here, the standard Torsen Quattro, standard 40/60 base, and then it adapts a little bit. And that is very interesting because A6 and Q7, they used to share the technology. Now the A6 moved more together in a technology center with the A5, and the Q7 together with the all-new Q9, which is the larger brother, they form this one family, and they still have the classic Quattro all-wheel drive system. For example, it's also good for towing, 3.5 tons of towing capacity, and with heavy load in the rear, that also makes more sense and so on. And that actually counts for all the engines. So there's no Quattro Ultra here whatsoever in the Q7 or in the Q9. That's very interesting as well. So imagine the scenario that you leave your house with your whole family and then everyone wants to get in at the same time. Then you can do here one press of the key fob and hold it a little bit, and then you can actually open all doors. And you can see the difference that here, due to the sensor, this one wasn't opening fully because I was standing in front of that. The other doors all open at the same time, not very fully, but you can push them a little bit further. You can also keep holding it, then the windows also would go down. You can also close all doors again when you hold this key fob in here. Inside the doors, the top part is not hard packed, but it's also not very plush underneath, so this could be a little bit softer. Then here, one of the speakers of the optional Bang & Olufsen sound system, cool sound. This is here for the ambient lighting, a little bit perforated. Here for the elbow, it's a little bit softer, but still not too soft, could be softer here. I love the classic controls here of the window levers and the side mirrors here, this control. This is really appreciated. They went back to this standard control. They had this black panel there before. Now they go to the solution that everyone knows, and it's also easier to control and everything. Then here, the steering wheel is the S-line, so we have a perforation on the side and the S-line badge. And when all the screens are off, you can see here, this is basically one black panel, and we're soon going to show you how it looks like when the screens are alive. And then here, this is also new. You have the turning indicators here, like inspired from the all-new Audi Q3. This and this, and to me it's not long enough. You can get used to it, yes, but when the indicators are a little bit longer, that's actually easier to reach them then. And also here, this is the control then, for example, for the wipers, and this is in one bar. It's more design reason, gear selection, and on the other side. Not to forget the inside of the doors. This is actually all hard pack, so I would wish for some fabric cover here. And then the seats. This is the Sport Seat Plus. Has illumination in here, it has potential speakers, it has massage seat, and here, this is an integrated head restraint form. You can move this one a little bit up and down, but that's it. The normal sport seat would look the same, just doesn't have all the functionality. And then there's also a normal seat with a separated head restraint with a little bit more open form. Here, the Sport and Sport Plus seat, they are a little bit more enclosed actually, so they hold a little bit tighter. But in all cases, the seat ergonomics are good because you have this platform where you have the upright seating position. And it's also special to this platform and to the siblings here that you always have this even entry sill. You know, there's not like you don't step back down in the car. You know, this is like the same level as the door sill. So that's a pretty cool feature, definitely. Headroom with 1A9, 6'2". So there's enough headroom left here, no problem. And this is a panoramic roof. You can still get a closed roof. But the cool thing is that this one is a roof that you can still open. And you know, that has been becoming more rare and rare and rare. And here you can see there's a huge opening here as well. Now we take a look at the cockpit. It's very interesting. So first of all, you have the digital instruments, you have the main infotainment screen, and you also have the passenger display. And criticism here by possible customers and existing customers is that you have a lot of black bezels. Mercedes also has this issue in some cars at this moment. And also that here, and I criticize it as well, it looks like a grayscale theme here for the main infotainment and also for the passenger display. And there are some cool themes available actually. For example, here catalog, then you can switch between some. Here, for example, that's very interesting. New York, then preview, you can check it out. And then, for example, here behind you see the skyscrapers, and when you go to the main menu, you have the skyscrapers right there. So, and then it also switches here, Central Park view from above. That's pretty cool, right? You know, this contrastish but kind of grayscale view stays, but you have some different backgrounds, or here they switch a little bit. But if you want to have things like these, this is just a preview. You have to buy them then with your audio account, with the app. And that is also something they should include some themes and that you're not supposed to buy them, right? Other than that, here, the seat cooling or seat heating is in the lower part here. This is also how you change the climate unit. I think it's still not ideal that you have this bar in front of it. They thought that you rest your hand here and then do it like this, but it's not that comfortable to click it, you know, from how you have to move your hands, I feel at least. And then you see here, this the gear selection, drive, reverse, and park, same like with the indicators on the other side. And this is also something they reintroduced. So before that, everything capacitive PS here. this is still capacitive. At least you have some kind of feedback, but it's not the best one, let's say that way. Heated steering wheel. And here you have now the jog wheels again. Maybe they're not the most premium, yes, but I'm happy to have these jog wheels again. They could make nice clicking sounds, and with the volume on the right side and on the left side you can scroll some of the details here in the instruments. And you can also change the instrument details here, for example, to the map view from the car internal GPS. And also here, this is pretty helpful. I once again have the real RPM meter right there, and even in normal driving modes. And even the RS5 doesn't have that. It only has it in the sport mode, but here in all driving modes you have this analog RPM meter gauge again. And of course you can also get here this head-up display, and here in the shade we can also see the ambient lighting at the inside of the doors. Here also this perforated area, and that also this Sport Seat Plus has this very small illumination right there. Soon news here in the middle console. Quickly about the seat materials. So the normal seat and the sport seat, inside animal leather, outside leatherette, because Audi says the outside has a lot of stress when getting in and out, so it's more durable to make it leatherette. Unless you are here with the Sport Seat Plus, then the outside bolster are also animal material, for whatever reason. Mercedes and BMW offer animal-free solutions completely, are very successful with that, and on a technological sense, it's no big magic anymore to do that. But Audi doesn't offer it yet. Why is it important to me? Animals are to me friends and family and not products. That's why I think they should also have a better offering as for that. You know, there's always this plastic argument that you say, as soon as you have leatherette, then it's more plastic and so on. Here, this seat also has a plastic covering. They make it that the seats are more durable. And if you want to save plastic in a car, this guy has over 1/2 ton of plastic overall. If you really want to save plastic in a car, then start here at the inside of the doors, and from the inside the whole cabin, also in the trunk cover from behind. We recently disassembled a whole vehicle with Volkswagen together, and you could see all the different parts and so on. So there are a lot of better places to save plastic in a car if you really want to do so. Then the middle console here is very interesting. 2 USB-C chargers right here. Then you have inductive charging pads, and they are equipped with this MagSafe. So there we go. Then it's like, holding them tight, and they are also supposed to be ventilated around the ring a little bit, microfiber underneath, so this is a very nice build quality. Yeah, the high gloss black is not necessary here, I would say, but at least you have a button still for the drive select and a volume jog, a manual one here. And then for the middle console, there you can have some alternatives. This is this aluminum or aluminium look. But you can also have nice matte wood here, for example, what I would prefer. But it's both fine. Also high quality here from these cup holders, 4-dot design. I appreciate that. From the elbow here, I mean, it works here from the ergonomics, but it's both not too soft, but still okay, I would say. The middle console cannot be slid forward or backward, but just upward. And then this is, by the way, here the key fob. All fine as well. And then you have some more space underneath. 12-volt charging is there, but as I said, the USB-C charging then there in the front. Now to the rear seats. More speakers for the Bang & Olufsen sound system, and that sounds really good, by the way. Then here we also have the electric shade right there, so that's pretty cool. And let's see how much it covers when it's up. Covers quite a lot, so that's very nice. You also have the electric door function right here. Once again, if you have picked that option, goodbye. Yeah, now I have to wait until it closes and then hello. So there we go. Then we have here the electric seat controls for the rear bench, and it's here in this 2/3, 1/3 split. That's also how you can adjust how much trunk volume and length you have, because you see that difference here is actually, that's quite a lot. You can see here the difference. Wow, that's pretty significant how you can move that one forward. And you can also change the inclination then, make it more relaxing here or more upright, depending on how you want to sit, and also how the trunk length looks like. So here, this is then the difference in the inclination here. So very well adjustable. Everything of that. Soon more to getting into the 3rd seating row. Interesting is that here the seat itself on the outside is pretty narrow and extraordinary narrow. The comfort itself is good, sit upright, but you don't have too much space in width because they also stress the middle seat here. First of all, here, legroom. There's still some legroom left, even if a tall driver is driving. USB-C charging in the seat, then a climate unit for the rear seat. Also, you can get seat heating for the rear seats and so on. And then here, this middle seat is as wide as hardly in any other European vehicle, actually. So this is a very wide, full seat, basically, or almost full. Just the back part then here is a little bit harder. And headroom, of course, also no problem. And talking about the headroom here, we can see this roof. You can still open this roof, and then you also have this optional, of course. And again here, you have this digital shade in there, and there you can see the difference. The heat filter is always in, so the PDLC doesn't change that, but you see that the glare is different. Here can you also see it on the seat. So here, for example, this is without, and when I activate it, you can also see how the glare then diminishes. So then it's still helpful to have it closed, electronically closed, so to speak, just to have less glare, you know. But it still gets hot, of course, even though there is a heat filter inside. They're sometimes better, they're sometimes, you know, good. They are better and good. Worse filters usually not, but it will still always get hotter than if you pick the closed roof. But you can still get a closed roof here for the all-new Audi Q7. Then interesting also to get the third seating row. So here we have this button, and then this 2/3 goes forward. And while it does that, I'll push my seat forward here a little bit on my side, that I can check out if I can still fit there as a tall L. Yeah, like that. I could still sit here. And then third seating row. Let me get around to you. It's always funny. And this is a helpful entry here. There we go. And yeah, that doesn't really work for tall L, so it's more like this soccer game thing. And you also have ISOFIX on the third seating row, so that's helpful that they thought of that, so you can use that for child seats, for example, or if the children are not that tall yet, so to speak. And if you want more space here, then it would be the Audi Q9, the bigger brother. Even here, luxury features like USB-C charging and seat heating, even for the third seating row. Now to the trunk or the boot, which is pretty cool because of the electric seats. Then here we have either 580 or 720 liters for the 7-seater. And it depends on where the second bench is moved forward or backward. And let's take a look here. So even if the third row is up, this still fits behind it. That works. And then underneath you can also store this trunk cover. That's a clever idea. I have already de-installed it. Then I have to remove the left and the right part here to store it underneath, because you can put the seats here up, and see about the head restraints, easily done. And then the interesting thing is here I have one button to fold it all down, one button to rule them all. And then it takes a while, but trust me, no, look at that, yeah, that was close. So then we have here, this one goes down. It really takes a while, you know, so I have to be patient. Also interesting that here, this one starts first, and then the other ones follow the other 2/3. Not sure if there's like a technological reason for that. The front seats, by the way, they have been going a little bit forward. Now you can see that when these are down, then they here, see that? They come towards us then again a little bit. So, and then, yeah, you have the full setup. That's actually pretty cool. The width here, so in this case here, this is 1.40 meters. But in the upper area here, this is even further. This is 1.20 meters or 48 inches. So that's actually pretty cool. The height here is at 31 inches, 80, a little bit less than 80 centimeters. Also pretty cool. The normal length here to the second seating row is at almost 1.10 meters, 43 inches. And then you can also move this bench here also when it's up a little bit forward. That would also be possible. And then the full luggage setup here is the full ruler, 2 meters, 78 inches. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And the cool thing is also that you can just press one button. You can also individually fold the seats, yes, but just with the press of one button, you can fold everything up again. Looks always spectacular how this is being orchestrated. And for me, this is a very, very helpful feature, because you know, long-term subscribers know that like folding seats, trunk and so on, because we have our different language formats and horizontal and shorts format. This always takes a lot of effort if you have to do that like 4 or 5 times in a row for filming. So this is then a very relaxing trunk part for me here today. So yeah, thanks to the Q7 for that. Sport mode. Well, that was 0 to 80 kilometers an hour with this 3-liter diesel, 300 horsepower, and that was actually quite decent. Of course, it always has a lot of torque and you won't lack acceleration. Of course, like the first, maybe like half a second is not that spontaneous if you compare it to a petrol engine, but then especially when you're at higher speeds on the motorway and so on, you know, as we say in German, der hat ordentlich Druckwatt, which would be something in the colloquial art of has a lot of pressure, yo. Yeah. Oh yeah, using these indicators here, when we had it in the Q3 already, I say you get used to them a little bit, but they feel somehow strange anyways, a little bit hard also, and it is definitely easier to set an indicator when it's more standing out here. So I think there the design doesn't serve the function. Yeah, that's the thing. Driving modes, at least I have this button here in the lower part, so I can also click them through basically here. And let's start in the comfort mode. You might remember we have the comfort setting of the air suspension here. That means that the comfort setting is more or less like the normal setting of the normal air suspension setting. Everything's set a little bit to the sportier node. But I think that's totally fine with the air suspension. So if you want a more comfortable ride, it's of course important to go for the air suspension. You can also go for the non-sporty setup. And even more important, not to pick the largest wheels, just to have some more dampening from the tire left. So these are the two factors you can really vary. One thing they did here in the development was to reprogram or rework the all-wheel drive system in a way of that the, let's say, advantages of driving dynamics is not only when you apply the throttle, but also when you are rolling into a corner. And what happens here now is that the car is and feels a little bit more dynamic when you go off throttle, roll into the corner, you are in the corner, and then you accelerate out again. Then of course it helps that we have a little bit more power on the rear wheels always, but especially like this when you're not accelerating, then the car feels a little bit more dynamic than before. And I have to say, as long as you're not like in serpentine roads and so on, the car doesn't feel too heavy or too bulky for me. The steering is very light for my taste, maybe even a little bit too light, so I would probably go then for the individual mode and then here program it that I can, for example, have maybe everything comfortable or something, or maybe comfortable suspension, but then go for the steering. Dynamic. Yeah, thank you. Leah is my non-digital assistant. So yeah, the dynamic setting, that's better here. But it's not really that firm, but in dynamic steering setting, that's definitely better. That on the road? Piece that fell off of a car or something like that, yeah. The steering itself, it doesn't have a dead zone area or something, so also fine commands are being transported. And you remember that we have the acoustic windows here, and or even when you knock them, like knock knock, someone home here, then it stays really, really silent all the way around. Or the inductive charging pin is also communicating to us. And I mean, we cannot drive 200 kilometers an hour today or something, but I think it's super silent here, extremely relaxing. What I do miss from the seat ventilation, because it's super hot today outside, that we had the reasons in the RS5 again, the seat ventilation by Audi is not strong at all. Even if you go to level 3, there's hardly anything coming through the ventilation. So we had a couple of different other manufacturers which had way stronger ventilation. So seat ventilation would need to be stronger. But the base ergonomics of the seats are good. And also how you sit in the vehicle. I'm still a fan of the platform. you know, of all of these siblings and so on, that you have a good position in the vehicle as well, and you're very well insulated here from the cabin, that you can really calm down and everything. Driving mode, let's go to the comfort setting again, see about suspension also when we have some waves in the road and so on. But it's here that Audi always tries to find a good balance that's not too sporty but also not too wobbly. And I think usually find a very good setup here. So the suspension settings with the Audis, always very happy with that, even with the sporty models, because they always argue that they want comfort in their sportier models as well. And I think that's for everyday driving life a good decision, unless you specifically want something that is even more extreme in the sporty sense. And here BMW iX, like this you don't have like this floaty feeling like you have from a Mercedes GLE, for example. There the air suspension is set on a softer note. Here in the Q7 you find this balance once again, and we will soon once again compare that also to the BMW X5, and then I can also give you my remarks to that, how I see the differences between those two cars. Maybe let's try to shake it up intentionally here, see what happens. There's a beautiful alpine lake here running next to us. It's always interesting with you know, all these sediments and so on from the stones and from the mountains, that the water appears greenish. That's you know, that's pretty cool. So even if I would intentionally try to you can see the G-forces here with Leah's legs, but even here very precise and crisp. So this vehicle always stays very, very calm. I like that. It's a great driving feeling, and it's also fun to drive it. And that's something you have to achieve, that a large SUV is fun to drive. So if you ask me, what's the difference then to the previous generation Q7? I feel it has some more dynamic factor. It feels smaller than before. Before, I would say you did feel that this is a larger vehicle than also the X5 or the GLE, but here I think it hides a little bit of the length. Of course, we also have the rear axle steering spec in this vehicle that makes the maneuvering around very, very easy. And that also helps because the rear axle steering is basically faking a shorter wheelbase, and that's also what you feel, especially when parking in and out. That's pretty helpful. The visibility to the rear is yeah, that's maybe a little bit worse than before, but you have to pay attention that you have the head restraints down to the side. It's fine, and you have this large cabin also above your head, so you have a good traveling feeling in this vehicle. With this space here on the side. Good thing is that it's here soft also at the side of the middle console. That's also helping when you hit it, with your right leg there. Yeah, we can argue about the black bezel cockpit. It's maybe something I found more beautiful before, but there was a lot of high gloss black. And then at least you can now have this different middle console where you can also apply the matte wood and so on. Leah seems to be relaxed. Yeah, relaxed. So
in the corners it feels a little bit heavy.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. As a driver, I feel that the car's not that heavy, but we also first of all went down like the hill, and of course it's sometimes a little bit different what you experience than as a passenger, especially when you move such a heavy vehicle around here, and only some vehicles can basically manage to hide this. But the platform itself, as I said, it has been proven over the last decade basically, and yes, they have of course further developed this car. It counts as a new generation, and of course you also carry over some stuff from the previous one. And for example, what I also found interesting is that the RS Q8, from the previous generation, there is no new generation Q8 yet, and I'm not even sure if that's going to happen. So for the moment they will still keep selling the existing Q8. So the RS, that's racing granny. So the RS Q8 was even fun on the racetrack, and I mean a large SUV fun on the racetrack, that's very rare. And this is also something where you feel this heritage. Not that this one here would have racing genes or something, but the platform itself is pretty cool. And you also still have the classic quattro all-wheel drive system, not the quattro ultra, so you have more rear wheel bias here. It's also better for towing, for example. The converter automatic gearbox is very calm. You hardly feel the transitions and so on. Even when we did the fast acceleration, that was also in a rather calm way. So yeah, driving wise, I think it ticks a lot of boxes that a large SUV has to tick. So yeah, maybe besides you have to get used to the indicators, and they're not really a progress. There's hardly anything to find which would be disturbing. One thing we had a lot of problems with recently, and also in newer Audi models, especially in like the segment below that, like A5 and this is like here, right? Yeah, A5 and Q6, for example, as well, or the like both electric and also combustion engine side, and A6 as well. Told you that on technology-wise, they are no more together, and Q7 and Q9 are a little bit separated. The lane keeping assist was often extremely annoying, and luckily, at least for our findings so far today, it hasn't intervened in a obnoxious way yet. So I'll keep you updated with that the longer we drive, of course, if I should notice anything like that. But that's a good sign so far. What you can also do is when you the inductive charge. I think when it's full, it's sometimes like it discharges 0.5%, then it starts again, then it stops. That's probably what's happening here. The favorite button, you can hit it to program it to the EU speed line. Speed line is also good. Speed chime law. The speed chime law. Yeah, sometimes I have funny things I say. And then we also have something else. We can scroll down, and then, for example, if I would have annoying, like here the lane keeping assist, I could just swipe down and then also deactivate it right here. Do you really want to switch off? Yeah, you have to confirm it again. But let's leave it in for a moment. I'll also do the German moderation for all German fans very soon, and then that also gives me more road and screen time, basically. You can see if anything happens there. But so far, that was actually fine, and I'm happy about that. Even though we're not on the motorway here yet, we can also activate the cruise control, also with the active steering and everything in place. Let's see if the road is being kept here. Yeah, okay, traffic sign recognition as well. Now, that's good actually, because this was a construction site, and see here the car automatically reduced the speed. Now I'm on the gas again, and that's just a little bit quicker, in the whole process. Yeah, and the engine itself is also rather calm. Only when you're stationary, maybe here that's diesel. As soon as it's running, it's really refined as well. And as I said, the automatic gearbox is, a lot of stuff here what you used to know also from the previous generation. And since these basic things of the vehicle was also where the people were happy with, there was also not much urge to change a lot there in that respect, So fair enough. And our consumption for today, we did some Austrian countryside, but then also some city traffic and so on, and stuck behind some tractors and whatever, so like a small mix, and we end up with about 7.4 liters on 1 kilometer. So that's a little bit more than 30 mpg US and close to 40 mpg UK. And prices, we have the European or German prices already start 88,000 euros as it stands here right now, with that diesel 300 horsepower and really full spec air suspension, then the rear axle steering, the large wheels, blah blah blah, panoramic roof. 125,000 euros. That already hurts in the pocket, definitely, but it's also not that far away from the competitors and so on. So they have also a similar pricing structure. And tell me what you think about the all-new Audi Q7. And now it's time to check out the competitors.